breaking and entering, drunk and disorderly, law and order. A former prosecutor and a defence barrister, not your usual pairing. And the result? Conversations about crime and punishment that are guaranteed to get you thinking.
Welcome to Justice Matters, a weekly podcast with Lizzie Green and Jay Merchant. Our episodes are every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at Justice Matters Pod for clips. Enjoy the episode. This episode deals with serial killers, sexual offenses, and other violent crimes. Discretion is advised.
Good morning, Jay.
Hey, good morning. We're back.
We are back. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Very good.
Yes.
So, look, today's episode, we're going to go on a little bit of a meandering journey.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you where I started with this. So I have always thought it was very odd when I research particular cases, or I am a true crime fan myself and
Nice.
listen to other podcasts or read things. And I hear about these heinous criminals who have fan clubs.
Okay.
Like literally.
The groupies.
The groupies of these criminals. And of course, everyone would think immediately of Ted Bundy.
Okay.
And so I was interested in the psychology of that. Like, what would compel anyone to hear about the crime some of these people commit and think, oh, well, that's someone who I want to write to while they're serving their life sentence.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe there's some sort of physical attraction, or I don't know. Or maybe they just resonate with what's transpired somehow. I'm not sure.
Which is so disturbing.
It is.
But anyway, so I started to look at that. And as I was doing that, then I kept coming up with some actually quite recent cases
Really?
which have taken a little of a turn from the typical kind of fan club of often women writing to convicted killers, professing their love or whatever. We've got, with the advent of social media and all of these platforms, the ability for other types of offenders to have other types of fans. And so I'm thinking specifically of Luigi Mangione, who killed the healthcare CEO. Allegedly, yes, sorry. And also currently the trial of Karen Reed in the US, who is charged with manslaughter of her, or murder in the second degree, or manslaughter of her husband.
Who I think was a police officer. Yeah.
And so both of those very recent matters have a fan base as well. So I thought we'll finish.
Mangione, doesn't he have a GoFundMe page or something like that with respect to his legal defense?
Indeed he does.
Wow.
So I'm going to get to those, but I thought let's go back to the start.
Let's go back in time.
And thankfully this particular offender, who also came up in my searches of killers with fans, he didn't actually have fans, probably because nobody actually knew who he was. But Jack the Ripper was a name that came up. And I guess the crimes of Jack the Ripper have gone down in history.
Yeah, I mean, look, who did it, and the way he did it at that time. Mm-hmm. It's kind of.
I'm sure there's probably nobody out there who hasn't heard of Jack the Ripper, particularly if they're listening to a true crime podcast. But his crimes were committed between August and November 1888. So
long time ago.
Very long time ago. And the victims that were identified were Mary Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. But there's always speculation that was the tip of the iceberg. There may have been more. Yes.
Yeah.
And so they were very brutal murders. They involved quite gruesome details in terms of how they were killed. And this was a question, who was this person, was speculated about greatly back then and continued to be the source of mystery 400s
Yeah.
of years.
I mean, they're still trying to. I mean, I think they had some sort of breakthrough or something. Am I jumping the gun? I'll
No,
sit
that's
down.
all right. Yeah,
Objection
no.
sustained.
But they did. So
Overruled.
they didn't know. They didn't know who it was for so long. But we've had recent, and this isn't really about fans, but I couldn't believe this. They've had recent action on this case. So a bloodstained shawl that was said to have been found on the body of one of the victims was purchased at auction in 2007 by an author and a Jack the Ripper researcher, Russell Edwards. And it was recently found to have DNA that was able to be identified as belonging to the victim, but also a Polish barber by the name of Aaron Kosminski, who was a suspect back at the time. And it seems they were on the right track, the investigators, but he hadn't been able to be conclusively identified until now.
Well, the technology just wasn't there.
That's right.
If there is a definition of fresh and compelling, that might be it.
That would have to be it. But so he was only 23 when he allegedly committed these offences. But to uncover the killer's identity conclusively, Kosminski's oldest brother's great-great-granddaughter actually helped that researcher and provided a DNA sample that was able to be matched to the shawl. So there may actually be an answer to the Jack the Ripper. But
or that he was in the location.
Well, true.
Right?
Yes.
Looking at it from the defense side of things.
And Kosminski's relatives have called for a new inquest so it can be properly tested. And yes. But so who would have thought action on a case from 1888 in 2025? But I include Jack the Ripper only because I think maybe the genesis of fan clubs can be traced back to the general fascination that a lot of the population have with true crime. And we see it now so much with investigative journalism through the podcast. The popularity, all of that. There is definitely an appetite for the details of the worst that people do, you know. And so I include that just to say it's not unheard of to have an interest in true crime and to follow cases and be fascinated and appalled and horrified, which is how I feel. Absolutely, I'm interested, but not in a way where I'm.
You're not going to donate money to Luigi Mangione.
I am not.
No, but think about it though. Like in the United States, you know, the Zodiac Killer. So another one where there is widespread fascination on the events, what transpired, the suspects. There's tours that will take you to every single location. Every exhibit is available online so that you can see what they saw back in the day.
Did they ever identify the Zodiac Killer? No, another unsolved.
And that's why, that's part of the, you know, the mystique of it and the drive.
And that case has made its way into, you know, like TV shows
and
movies and that sort of
TV
thing.
TV shows, books.
Yeah. All right, but so when you look into it further, there are true crime fans and then there are criminal fans.
Yeah, zealots or another way to describe it. Yeah.
And so I thought I'd go back and have a look at that. And there's a lot out there that you can read.
Okay.
So again, a lot of these names will be familiar, but I'll give a little bit of context so that we can understand, in my opinion, the craziness of these people having.
Let's get into it. Let's talk about these crazies.
All right. So let's start with Ted Bundy.
Yes.
From the 1970s. So he was convicted of brutally murdering dozens of young women in the 1970s.
Wasn't it like sororities?
I think there were some, yes. Many of them were kidnapped, raped, and assaulted before their death. One of his victims, just 12 years old.
Unreal.
So we are talking about horrendous criminality. But Bundy himself was an attractive, college-educated, and charismatic man. He was a former law student. No reflection on the law.
No.
He had worked in politics. I'll say nothing there.
Well, I was going to say which party.
And he was described by those who knew him as very likable with a good sense of humour. So when he was caught by the police and charged with these murders, there were many who could not believe he was capable of committing such atrocities.
All right. It just didn't fit the profile.
That's right. Margaret Good, who was one of his early defence lawyers, recalls how women would turn up to court and pass her handwritten notes to give to him. He just doesn't look like the type to kill somebody, one young woman told a reporter outside the courtroom. And look, to be fair, I have said on this podcast, doesn't look like a killer or they're so good looking. I know in my rational head that is not a factor at all, but I guess that also is part of that.
Yeah.
You don't expect.
No, somebody that's involved in politics, somebody that's a law student, has been described by his peers as charismatic. I mean, it's just not your typical what you would associate until now. But so another woman, Carol Ann Boone, who became very close friends with Bundy while he was in prison. Didn't he marry her?
Yeah. Agreed to marry him just moments before he received a death sentence for the murder of the 12-year-old. She believed he was innocent. She had a child with him while he was on death row.
Can I just say, I believe this is the very first matter that cameras were allowed into the courtroom. And so, from memory, he actually proposed to her whilst being recorded on television. So cameras in the courtroom now play a feature as well in the United States.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
And he was married when he was committing these offences.
Yes, he was with a gal.
Yes.
I just can't remember much.
Because
it was before my time.
A lot of people may have watched the Netflix, some TV
there's
show.
Been a ton of films and stuff
but
on
wasn't
this.
it Zac Efron who played
It was.
Ted Bundy?
Yeah.
And look, showing my age, but Zac Efron, he's a cutie. You can see why if he was representative, and there was criticism actually of that because people said that he was too good looking and too appealing and that it diminished the heinous nature of what Bundy had done. But I think maybe by the sounds of this, it was
effective.
Yeah. He had fans all through his trial. And even
sorry to interrupt, but I've just got this image of Manson with those three gals holding hands, singing in the court corridor.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I know probably, Bundy got married and had a kid with one. So.
Yeah, he's not the only one. I didn't include Manson. I don't even like looking at his photo, to be honest.
No. That was the first thing that popped into my head was those three
he had
nutbags. Because they're crazies, holding hands, singing songs, walking down the court corridor when all of this murder and mayhem transpired.
It is beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
But even today, so Bundy's crimes were in the 70s.
Yes.
So we're now a good 50
few years later. Yep.
And according to a Ted Bundy expert.
Oh, we have experts now.
Yes, Kevin Sullivan.
Okay.
Some girls wish he was alive so they could date him. MTV.com describes a TikTok trend in which girls videotape themselves as his victim, and some even pretend to be him. And according to that article, hundreds of teens are role-playing Ted Bundy and other serial killers.
And these are people in the community. I mean, you just never know.
No, you never know.
Good grief.
All right. So that was our first one. Then, so I'm going chronologically. Richard Ramirez, if that's how you pronounce his name. Yes. He was known as the Night Stalker.
The Night Stalker.
So again, a name that many true crime fans would be familiar with. And he terrorized California in the mid-1980s with a spree of brutal sexual assaults and murders.
Okay.
He went from being a drifter to an infamous predator who killed with guns, knives, hammers, and his bare hands, and was linked to at least 14 slayings of men, women, and children.
So he didn't discriminate.
No.
Yeah.
His first known murder was the rape and stabbing of a 79-year-old widow.
So he would actually at nighttime go into people's houses. Wasn't that part of his MO? Yeah.
Yes.
Or motive operandus?
That's right. He then, about 8 months later, resumed the killings. And so most of them occurred in Los Angeles and took place during home invasions. His victims, some of whom actually survived, were often sexually assaulted and beaten, and satanic symbols were found at many of the crime scenes. So that Night Stalker moniker created a panic. And so there was this huge surge.
Well, that whole community would just be how do you protect yourself in your home?
Because that's meant to be your safe place. Yeah. That's right. But there was a huge surge in gun sales. It was eventually a fingerprint that led to his identification. That's right. It was fingerprints from a stolen car. And on August 29, 1985, his mugshot was released.
Okay.
And he was then recognised in public. And there was a bit of an altercation with people yelling that he was the Night Stalker.
Oh, it was like a public lynching type deal in the streets.
Yes.
We're having a block party.
That's right.
Our special guest is Ramirez.
And so he tried to carjack a vehicle, and she recognised him, and he ended up getting caught.
Right.
So he got a lot of attention. Women would line up outside the courthouse hoping to get a glimpse of him. He had to wear sunglasses to his court appearances to try and avoid recognition. It was quite a circus-like environment, apparently.
Yep.
And I read an article where this one woman said at the time, "He reminds me of Mick Jagger. This is a very lurid case. It's got all sorts of elements that are very appealing to the populace. It's got sex and violence." And to me, that is such a distressing thing to say, because these are real people as his victims and their families. And this person's talking about it like it's a movie or a TV show or entertainment.
Yeah, there's a level of intrigue there that's unsettling. But it's there. And it's clearly evident.
Yeah. Admirers flocked to the prison where he was being held.
To do what?
"Well, I just wanted to see what he looked like. I think he's cute," said one woman waiting outside the jail.
I wonder if she would have said that at 10 o'clock at night in her own home if he decided to venture off into her neighborhood.
Yeah, not so cute then. No. Some musician wrote a song about him. He was very handsome and striking. Other women sent him provocative pictures featuring themselves wearing lingerie, pearls, or, in one woman's case, a rope wrapped around her neck.
See, this is what I'm talking about. These are people that live next beside. We just never know. Yeah.
There's so many of them.
Just never know who's out there.
Even during the trial, there were issues. So despite all of the gruesome evidence that came out in that trial, one of the jurors fell madly in love with him.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? And on Valentine's Day, in the middle of the trial, she brought him a cupcake that said, "I love you," iced on top. She did vote for him to be found guilty, nonetheless. Like, the evidence was overwhelming. Yeah. After the trial, though, she did apply for a detective's license so that she could attend private visits with his
It's easier
lawyer.
to get into the prison.
Yes.
Yes.
And her plan worked, and when the lawyer left to go to the bathroom, she kissed and groped with the convicted killer.
Get in there while you can.
She wasn't the most successful fan, though. Another fan actually married him, and that was Doreen Leoy, who was the most devoted fan. She once told his lawyer, I think, that she fell in love with him after seeing his mugshot flashed on TV. Because what is more appealing than a mugshot?
Hey.
I don't understand. He never expressed remorse, and after receiving his sentence, he stated, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory." So that's the kind of cold-blooded monster we're dealing with.
And I mean, obviously, I'd like to think I'm sane, so I just don't understand. I don't get that mindset of these people. Yeah, there's intrigue there. Don't get me wrong. Jack the Ripper, Zodiac. There's that level of intrigue. Like, did they do this? Did they do that? But this is next level.
Oh,
Like, this is psychologically problematic.
it really is. And you will see, I'm talking about male killers for the most part with female fans. I have one female example, still female fans.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, the times are changing. We're in 2025.
But it's this, like, you're not seeing men necessarily. I mean, it has happened.
No, I would not write Aileen Warnos a letter and say,
That's
hey,
who we're going to talk
no
about.
way.
Yeah.
You're kidding.
All right. So that was Ramirez. He died in 2013 while on death row.
Good.
So his fans would have been very upset.
They would have been crushed.
Next is Jeffrey Dahmer. Again, very famous name.
Yes.
1991. He was a serial killer, and his arrest provoked criticism of the local police and resulted in an upsurge of popular interest in serial murder and other crimes.
I think part of the police problem in that one was that they didn't act sooner.
Yeah, I think so. So he committed his first murder in 1978. A second murder not till 1987, but then during the next 5 years, he killed another 15 boys and young men who were, for the most part, poor and African-American, Asian, or Latino.
So vulnerable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Although other serial murderers had claimed more victims, his crimes were particularly gruesome because they involved both cannibalism and necrophilia. In February 92...
So he's eating the corpses and doing intimate things with the corpses.
Yes.
Far out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember now. Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In 92, he was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, not a function we do here in Australia, and a 16th consecutive life sentence was added in May for another murder from 1978.
Yeah.
And so, not a lot to admire there. But despite the gruesome nature of his crimes, he received thousands of fan letters while incarcerated, some even including nude pictures and gifts. And in 1993 alone, his admirers sent him $12,000 to help him buy little treats in prison.
I come back to psychologically, I just don't know what drives, people to do that, I guess, I mean, what are your expectations? He's going to write a letter back to you, or, he's going to break out and we're going to convene and have a relationship after? I just don't understand.
What his relationship seems to involve.
You wouldn't
fatal delights.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be swiping right or left with him on Twitter or Tinder, I should say.
Yeah, see, we are so expert at
that.
Yeah,
I know.
Most women just sent him a few dollars to spend on cigarettes and a couple of books or magazines. And one woman said, he did awful things, but way deep down, he isn't a mean kid. No, I beg to disagree. Yeah.
I'll object to that.
Yes, so that was Dahmer.
Okay.
Then Dylann Roof.
Doesn't
Have you
ring a
heard
bell.
of him? No, I hadn't heard of him. 2016. So he was a white supremacist and mass murderer who opened fire on a church in Charleston. And he got such a massive following of fans online that they even came up with their own name for themselves, Ruthies.
Oh, you're kidding.
I don't know if they understand what a roofie actually is.
I don't either. No, I mean, it's roofies after a mass shooting from a white supremacist.
Yep. A group of women felt strangely aroused by the news of the murder. One was very honest about her confusing feelings, writing, I feel so bad that I find Dylann handsome, but what the fuck can I do about it? Well, move on from it, I would have thought.
Yeah, get mental health. I'm not sure, maybe.
One woman got his name tattooed beneath her breasts and kept a whole blog where she bragged about the love letters she'd sent him and shared lists of what she called lesser-known facts about Dylann.
All right. She wants to get to know the real Dylann.
She wanted everyone to get to know the real Dylann. Then we had, this one's sad, Nicholas Cruz,
Nope.
2018. He's also known as the Parkland school shooter.
Okay. I mean, there's so many in the
many.
United States, but
So he'd been expelled from Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida.
okay. So at the school that had happened, he was expelled from there.
Yes.
Okay. So he's not happy about being expelled.
No.
All right.
And on Valentine's Day 2018, he went back, opened fire, killing 17 people, wounding 17 others. And at that time, it was the deadliest school shooting.
Okay.
There have been worse ones since then. He had a backpack filled with magazines, carried a black duffel packed with his legally purchased AR-15 semi-automatic rifle, bless America. And school staff had been warned after his expulsion to be cautious
Be on
of
the
him.
lookout.
Yes. He'd been expelled for disciplinary reasons the year before, and they said he was a risk to student safety, so there was an acknowledgement of that. He was halfway through his 6-minute rampage before anyone issued a warning, even though a staff member saw him outside the school before he even got inside.
Yeah.
So that's upsetting. He did just go on a horrible shooting spree in classrooms, and I think he ended up setting up a bipod, which is like a tripod,
Right.
and picking people
just,
off.
Yeah.
The attack lasted less than 4 minutes and left those 17 people dead. And then he ditched the rifle in another stairwell, left the school, attempting to blend in with the crowd of escaping students. He successfully got away from the campus, which is not how most school shootings end.
No, they don't end well.
No. And he went to a Walmart at 2:50, stopped at a Subway restaurant to get a drink, and eventually headed to McDonald's. And it was at McDonald's that he was apprehended after being spotted by a police officer, because they knew who it was.
Right.
Yeah. So the police officer even said initially when he saw him, he looked like someone who might need help, and he thought, oh, can I help this person
to
out?
console this person.
And then realized who it was. So he pleaded guilty to them, and the state sought the death penalty. So the trial moved to the sentencing phase. A jury was tasked with hearing arguments as to whether or not he should be put to death.
Right.
But they did not vote for the death penalty.
Really?
No.
That's surprising.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was 9-4, 3 against, but it has to be a unanimous decision for death penalty.
I wonder if one of the 4 was, or some of the 4 were groupies or cruisers. Cruisers.
I know. So there's a Facebook community with 300 members called Nicholas Cruz, the First Victim. And it's a group of women who are in love with him. They share ideas on how they can help him. They make photo collages of the mass murderer with hearts around his head. They send love letters to him every chance they get. One of them said, I'm 18 years old. I'm a senior in high school. So she could have been one of his victims if she'd been there.
Yeah.
When I saw your picture on the television, something attracted me to you. She sent him suggestive pictures showing off her body. I'm really skinny and have 34C-sized breasts. Like, what the actual...
Yeah.
What are they thinking?
I don't know. And, if this is online, I would hate to see what else is online. You've got all these Facebook groups, Snapchat, Tinder, whatever else is out there.
Yeah.
And it's just brewing this conversation and hype about what this fella has done.
Luckily.
In all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Well, his defense lawyer, the public defender, that's probably a difference, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Said he had never seen that many letters to a defendant in his 40 years as a public defender.
Nor should
but he didn't let Cruz know. So he has refused to let
those
letters go to him.
That I have a problem with.
Oh, do you?
I do. He is withholding material that is his clients. Now, we might not like the content. They might be praising and they might be showing boobs or whatever.
But why should he get them?
Because the solicitor is acting for the client.
Mm.
And I would say there's a duty for him, irrespective, to hand them over to his client. You act in the best interests of your client. Doesn't mean you agree with them all the time.
Oh, I quite liked that he wasn't
Okay.
getting that adoration.
All right.
All right. Then we had Chris Watts, 2018.
Yes, that was, yep.
He
I remember
killed
oil
his
field.
wife and 2 little girls, and his wife was pregnant with their son
Yes.
at the time. So the initial report was that his family had vanished, and he made public appeals.
Yeah, another
for
one
help.
that goes on the television and seeks guidance from the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes
And
you
he knows
sick.
damn well.
Makes you sick.
Yeah.
And the photos of his little girls and his wife, just, they were so little and so cute.
And I believe from memory, she was a social media, like she had an online presence. She did a lot of self-talk. And so there was a massive following of her on, I think, Facebook, where she did live videos and such.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of increases the awareness of her and the situation.
Yes. So he initially tried to say that he had killed his wife because he found her killing their children.
It's bullshit.
And that's what happened. That's how it was borne out in court.
Yep.
So he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder when their bodies were all found in a oil field.
Yeah, it was an oil field.
Where
and
he had access to it.
He consciously put their bodies down a receptacle.
Can I tell you what they said?
No.
Apparently in
Go ahead.
court. So he firstly, he had to drive 45 minutes there. He put his wife's corpse in the back of the truck and his still living girls in the back seat. He dumped or buried the wife in a shallow grave. Then he went and smothered the younger daughter, I think, dumped her body, returned to smother the other daughter, and she apparently begged for her life. As he went to kill her, she screamed, "Daddy, no," and it was the last words she spoke. So I'm guessing he must have told that.
Yeah, he probably did. I mean, there'd be nothing in terms of what you could find. But I'm sorry whether you are or against the death penalty. This should be a death penalty case.
So he avoided the death penalty because of his pleas of guilt.
So I have a problem with that.
I
do. I mean, I remember this one because there's video footage of him going next door with the police because the neighbor had CCTV footage. And just his reaction, not knowing what's on that footage, but about to watch it with the neighbor and the police officer, right then and there, I knew something was up.
Really?
I did. It was that evident in his conduct.
Well, that would have been so stress-inducing.
Oh, can you imagine the anxiety of standing there? But at the same token, like I said, if there was a death penalty case, this should be one. And if there wasn't sufficient evidence to link him, which there was a lie detector test from what I understand, and other evidence that linked him. So I'm just shocked that he's still above ground on this one.
Well, and as soon as he started serving his time in custody, he started to receive love letters and fan mail.
Of course.
In prison. One letter from a 39-year-old woman said, "I want to get to know you so bad. It's not even funny. Literally, you're on my mind almost every single day since you were in the news." Another woman wrote that she's hoping to brighten his days with her letters, while another woman sent a picture of herself wearing a bikini with the caption, "I find myself thinking a lot about you." Okay.
And not thinking about what he's done to his small children and his wife.
So People reported in 2022 that he has been corresponding with multiple women during his incarceration. They send sexy pictures and he responds. And that's why I'm not sad that...
No, and I get that. I'm looking at it from the role of a solicitor, I guess.
Right.
And I just,
All right. He's been spending all of his money apparently in the prison on stamps and paper. He's got nothing else to do, so he feeds his ego in that way.
Well, and nothing else to do would be also passing the time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so that is quite recent. Then just in brief.
Okay.
I mean, I could go on.
Yeah, I know.
There's so many.
Yeah.
But
I'm waiting for Aileen.
Ian Brady, and we did an episode.
Oh, did you?
Well, they were part of an episode on couples who kill. So
Okay.
with his partner Myra Hindley molested and murdered 5 children in the 1960s. When he died of cancer in prison in 2017, a whole group of women went out spoke out on the internet acting like they'd lost their soulmate. Oh my God, I just heard about Ian. This is the worst day ever, one person wrote.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if some of these are just to get like 5 minutes of fame type deal, do their 60 minutes interviews.
I don't know.
I don't know.
She said, I'll love you forever and I've got your name on me for the rest of my life, and showed off a picture of the tattoos she had on her arms. Ian, Myra, Jeff for Dahmer, and Ted for Bundy.
All right. And these are allegedly functioning people in society that live next door to you people.
I know. Joseph Fritzl, who kept his own daughter locked in a cellar for 24 years. He abused her, used her as a sex slave. He fathered 7 children before she finally managed to escape.
Yes.
When he got caught, hundreds of women sent him love letters. They wrote that they knew he was good at heart, and at least one woman told him she was sure that he'd only locked up and sexually abused his daughter to keep her from getting into trouble.
Yeah, so it was the daughter's fault.
Totally the victim's fault. Both Lyle and Eric Menendez, who we've done an episode on.
You don't even want to get me on that matter. Right now, I have such a problem with the way that has transpired.
For their parole hearing.
Yes.
But they both got married in prison. Dr. Jeffrey McDonald, the Green Beret killer, and Scott Peterson, who were both convicted of killing their pregnant wives, are known to have attracted women while in prison. And the Scott Peterson matter, they have so many videos on that one as well. Like there is a huge following. Yeah. But, just to round it out, there are some bad endings for these fans. So in the 1990s, Beverly Bonner met inmate John Robinson, left her husband, went off with him upon his release, and then he murdered her.
Well, grass is not always greener on the other side.
Another woman became pen pals with Arthur Shawcross when he was serving time for killing 2 kids, and when he was paroled, she became his 4th wife. And he used her home as a base to go out and kill 11 more women.
Well, we need a headquarters.
So, be warned.
Yeah.
And then Aileen, how do we say her name?
Warnos.
Warnos. So it is out of chronological order. Misunderstood. But so 1991, she's our only woman today. So within a span of 12 months, November 30, 1989 to November 19, 1990, she killed 7 men between the ages of 40 and 65.
Yes.
And she alleged in each case that they had...
That she was the victim.
Sexually and physically assaulted her.
It wasn't her fault.
So during her trial, psychiatrists for the defense testified she had borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder.
Well, I would say antisocial. She shot and killed 7 people.
But she was sentenced to death for her crimes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was dubbed the Damsel of Death. So she was vilified in the press for what she'd done, but she did also have public vocal defenders at and shortly after her apprehension.
Yes.
Mostly feminists who maintained her right to self-defense and highlighted her history of trauma and abuse, and pointed to the discrepancies between her trial and the trials of Bundy and Dahmer, that they weren't comparative, like they weren't treated in a comparable way.
Right.
Dahmer was able to command a private lawyer, had the support of his family in court. She had no such resources.
She was poor. Like she was indigent from what I recall. Yep. And part of what, was the intrigue with her was how she dealt with the press. I mean, her looks, she had a type of a language and, Well,
know what happened after she got convicted?
No.
After her sentencing, she said to the court, "I'll be up in heaven while you're all rotting in hell." And she had apparently told the jury, "May your wife and kids get raped right in the ass."
Oh, wow. She's classy.
Yeah. Classy. Anyway, she also
You'd want to swipe right on that one or left or whichever way you do it these days.
She also had a lot of fan mail from women. And so most female killers in jail rarely get that kind of attention don't get marriage proposals. Many are, well, not many, but a number of them are battered women who've killed in self-defense. They're
Right.
not garnering that same kind of adoration. But her case did attract people who wanted to write to her.
Like perhaps maybe genuinely as opposed to aesthetically, I want to marry you and have kids with you type stuff?
Lesbian feminist academics claimed her as one of their own. They wrote
lesbian feminist academic.
Yes, they wrote searing articles and chapters about her narrative, studied the ways in which she'd been represented in the media. They marched in the streets to free her. And activists felt that she did what we could only imagine doing, and she was now going to die for them.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the Last Resort bar where she spent her last night in freedom now has a large painting of her behind their bar with a list of the names of the men she killed. It claims that business is booming.
It
at
would
that
be
bar. And fans take true crime destination vacations around her crime spots. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are Etsy stores where you can buy, mementos.
Yeah.
Yeah. That does a roaring trade, apparently. Anyway, so look, that is the types.
That's where we're at in society.
It really is.
We're funding, and I go back to Luigi Mangione, his matter.
Well, and that's a next level. So, sorry.
Yeah,
to
no, you
you.
can.
But I did look at the psychology because it makes you think, doesn't it?
Does.
Like that's your question. That's my question.
Whole thing.
So there is an expert, Dr. Soam Das. He's a forensic psychiatrist. He wrote an article about this. And he said that there are 5 reasons for an obsession with killers.
All right.
One is psychosis, which is very rare.
Yeah. And dangerous.
Yeah. One is history of trauma. So like this cycle.
Yeah. And we've talked about it previously, a pattern of behavior, and it's, at some point comfortable.
And so what he says is that these women who have been abused and mistreated feel safe in their relationships with killers because they're behind bars for the first time ever. Oh. They're in control and they're calling the shots.
All right.
So that makes a weird kind of sense.
It does, because I was thinking at it a little bit differently, but all right.
A savior complex. Women feel they could save or transform the prisoner or the killer, seeing it as a challenge.
That's right.
Yeah, good luck to you.
Yeah.
An idealized relationship. So some of these women have this kind of notion of a perfect relationship, and if they're in prison, if they're in a relationship with someone in prison, they're not dealing with the day-to-day minutiae. There's no socks left on the floor.
That's right. Or dinner that's not being made appropriately.
But then
whatever.
The last one is this actual diagnosis of hybristophilia. And it's a type of paraphilia, otherwise known as Bonnie and Clyde syndrome.
Okay.
Where you have an intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, including situations, fantasies, behaviors, and particular individuals. And the American Psychological Association says that those with hybristophilia are deemed to have a sexual interest in and attraction to those who commit crimes.
And that last one,
hybristophilia.
Hybristophilia. That to me is what's happening with all of these serial killers.
Yeah.
Like the massive following, and they are essentially devoting themselves to these killers.
Absolute heinous offenders. But so if we come back to where we started, Luigi Mangione and Karen Read. So not quite the same, but this idea of this fan club. So Luigi Mangione allegedly cold-bloodedly shot CEO Brian Thompson.
On TV, like it was caught on camera.
And he was not immediately arrested, but a few days later.
Another person that went for a feed after
McDonald's.
We're seeing a bit of a pattern here.
I know. But one of the things about him was how everyone immediately commented on how good looking he was.
Yeah. Another one of these, this shouldn't be the guy we're looking for.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he's also being held up as this kind of modern day Robin Hood.
That's right.
The bullets that they recovered said deny, delay,
Well, this is in relation to their private health care that
Yes.
costs an inordinate amount of money.
Deny, defend, depose.
Yeah.
Which is the healthcare system, apparently. But so there was a GoFundMe type page.
Like we're talking hundreds of thousands, if not over $1 million.
So at April 25, it was at $951,000. And he's from a wealthy family.
I know. He's from a loaded family. I get that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like...
and so he's definitely got these supporters. There's a free Luigi rally, 100 women crammed into a 15-floor hallway at the courthouse, people wearing T-shirts and that sort of thing.
And this brings into question, the jury system, right to trial before a juror of your peers. Well, I'm starting to now think that there should be and will be more applications for judge-only trials based off of...
How do you get an impartial jury?
I just don't know.
No.
And one of those donors could be on the juror list, and there's no way to find out.
No, because they have to
Yeah.
report.
It's just self-reporting.
And so they've done a lot of study about this because of the adulation that he's receiving.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, but apparently almost 4 in 10 young American adults view a man accused of murder, who also faces terrorism charges, Mangione, favorably. So they see him as someone who has done something good by killing the CEO of United Healthcare.
I know they look at it as he's standing up for those that are being disadvantaged by the private healthcare system in the United States.
And I think another part of it is our global village. And
what do you mean by global village?
Well, we know what happens across the world almost as soon as it happens.
We do.
We are all hearing things in real time. There are the social media platforms and the opinion spaces. And so we're also getting everyone's perspectives. And so what maybe would have been limited to your local geographical news
not anymore
is everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it builds and it builds, and everyone gets on that bandwagon, and that incites more opinion and more outpouring, and so it just snowballs.
And I feel like, and I could be wrong, and I could get in trouble for this, but I feel like it's more prevalent in the United States than it is elsewhere. And I don't know if there's a study, I don't know, but I get the sense there's no Canadian killers on that list, and I don't think there's any Australian, killers on that list.
No, actually there wasn't.
And it seems to me that there is this group of people in the United States that are just infatuated with this kind of stuff. And that's scary because these are the same people that vote, the same people that have access to their own weapons.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, he has his fans because of, a romantic interest.
Yeah, I mean, there's gals and guys out there that think he's dreamy.
Yes. But I think he's also now got this fan base who see him as their hero.
That's right. They were stuffed around by the healthcare system. Nobody stood up for them, and he did.
Allegedly.
That's allegedly.
But so then the last one that I came to was Karen Reed. And one of my students, I'm teaching miscarriages of justice this semester. And she said, have you been watching the Karen Reed case? And I was like, oh, no. So I went and looked it up. And I think currently, right at this minute, her second trial is running.
It is.
And so
it's on Court TV.
I don't want to comment too much about it till we get an outcome. But she has been charged with the killing of her husband, who is a police officer.
Yeah.
And it is, like I read a bit of it. Oh, I'm going to want to talk about it. But
I think we should at some point do an episode on it because I've got mates on Court TV and they're covering it. And
it is not by any means a clear-cut case.
Well, it sounds like it if they're going round 2.
Yeah. So anyway, but because there was a police officer involved and some doubt about what actually transpired after the first trial, evidence of or allegations of police cover-up and corruption.
There was some
mistreatment.
And the judge was not happy with the way
the lead investigator.
Yeah, counsel have conducted some of it. So there's a lot to unpack.
It's very complex, but she has her own fan club. So people come outside the courts when she was in there last year in April for her first trial, and they're wearing like free Karen Reid
Far out.
T-shirts, all in pink balloons, all of this sort of thing. And there was some guy who's called Turtle Boy. That's his online handle, a local blogger. And he launched a Canton cover-up series, publishing hundreds of articles and videos on the case. And he's had legal action taken against him.
Well, as he should.
In relation to
They are perverting
that.
with the course of justice.
Well, I know. But anyway, when
Free
the
speech,
mistrial
whatever.
last year, the hung jury was declared, a cheer erupted on the streets for Karen Reid. And so your issue about the jurors, that's where I think as well, how do you get an impartial jury? How do we harness this beast that is the internet and social media?
And free speech.
And free speech on the other hand.
You know, the constitutional right there.
So we've gone from writing letters to these heinous criminals.
Snail mail.
To these online platforms of fervent fans for whatever reason it might be. I just think, where is that going to end?
And where is it going?
Yeah.
I mean, it's escalating from your snail mail letter now to GoFundMe pages to riots in the streets. And I just, before I lose my train of thought, I am so damn thankful we do not have that here and we do not have that in Canada. That is something that the United States can keep for themselves.
And also, it is so biased as well. If we look at the people who are getting this kind of attention.
Yeah. The Menendez brothers. Not everyone gets a Netflix documentary.
And so many of these were good-looking, charismatic, white.
Aileen, absolutely. She was good looking.
Okay, apart from her. But it's not like we did an episode on Robert Robeson, who is still languishing on death row. And
he's not going to get a Netflix series.
That's right. Like who's choosing who gets this attention
Yeah,
and what impact will that have?
Off.
We've seen what's happened with the Menendez brothers. Yeah. They're getting a parole hearing.
Yes.
So anyway.
Yeah. We might have to revisit them too.
But interesting. Like I was taken aback. I knew they had fan clubs, but the extent
I didn't know the extent. Like I
horrific.
Knew. Yeah, I knew as well. And I did not know the extent. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, good luck to everyone out there. Thanks, Jay.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, please rate and review the podcast. If you're interested in clips, check out @Justice Matters Pod on TikTok and Instagram.